Hello, my name is Mr. Dowling. You are an English B student, and in today's video we are going to be focusing on the IB English B Paper 2 examination. We will be exploring reading. So, I have 10 tips for you that will hopefully help you ahead of your English B exams. Tip number 1, practice makes perfect. This one is obvious. I am sure that your teachers have given you lots of resources to practice with, maybe in class, maybe for homework. Also, I'm sure you are able to obtain some past examinations. They can be incredibly helpful. Even past papers from many years ago, it can still contain some relevant questions that you can practice. I know, for instance, that I use past papers from the 90s occasionally with my students. And also there are other similar exams that maybe you can play around with. For example, IGCSE, TOEFL, IELTS. Maybe they have a reading component. The questions might not be exactly the same, but any practice is better than no practice at the end of the day. Number 2, reading strategies. Make sure you know reading strategies, make sure you practice them, and make sure you are comfortable using them. By reading strategies, I'm mainly referring to 4 things. The first one is continuous reading. That is when you just read something normally at the pace you would normally read a book in your own time, or maybe a newspaper article. Number 2 is skimming. That is when you read something very quickly. Scanning is the third one. Scanning is when you read a bit slower and you're looking for a particular word or phrase. You find it, you stop. And the final one is close reading. This is when you look at maybe a sentence or a couple of lines or a paragraph in detail, and you're trying to find something out about that information. So you're focusing on a very small part of the text. Make sure you know those reading strategies. They are all incredibly useful and effective when it comes to the exam. Tip number 3, continuously read the passage. So I mentioned continuous reading before. This is when you just read something normally at a normal pace. And I would actually advise you to read the passage continuously before you even look at the questions. So just read the passage by itself and make sure you have an understanding of its general ideas. Maybe think about the gist of the text. Maybe you might even want to make a few notes. What is the whole text about? What is each paragraph about, for instance? But I think it's vital to have a good understanding of the passage before we start to worry about the questions. Number 4, we're now going to focus on the questions, and I think you should underline the key words in the questions. I would argue that the English B reading exam is not just assessing your ability to read the passage. It is also assessing your ability to read the questions. So think about that. When you are given a question, ask yourself, what is the question word here? Is it who, where, why, what, when, how? So think about the question words included in the questions. Think about the command words included in the questions. What is it telling you to do? What is it telling you to find out? If you misread the question, you're obviously going to provide a wrong answer, and that is what we want to avoid. You can avoid losing unnecessary marks by just paying attention to the questions. Number 5. I talked about reading strategies previously. It's now time to employ those reading strategies effectively. So ask yourself, when should I skim? Could I use scanning to help me answer question number 7? Do I need to do some close reading of a certain paragraph in order to help me answer question number 11? So make sure you are familiar with those reading strategies, and then make sure you actually use them in the exam to help you find the right answers. Number 6, please write the appropriate information when it comes to providing your answers. If the question says that you need to provide a word, just provide a word, one word. If it says a phrase, then obviously it should be something that's more than a word. Maybe it might be 2 or 3 or 4 words, but something short. It might say word or phrase, that's fine. But make sure that that you write what it asks you to write. Whether it be a word or a phrase or a particular pronoun, for instance. Also, remember those true or false questions. It's asking you to say whether it's true or false and provide the justification. So do what it asks you to do. Number 7, don't write too little, and also don't write too much. I see this a lot with those true or false questions when it comes to the justification. If you write too little, you might be missing the point. If you write too much, you might be self-penalising. So you might add too much detail, and some of your detail is not actually correct. So even though you've included some correct information, you've also included some incorrect information, and you will lose the mark. So make sure you don't write too much. It's worth looking at some of the official IB mark schemes to see what amount of information they normally want for each question type. Number 8, use positive and negative thinking, especially for the multiple choice questions. And this is something I've come up with myself. I don't really know how better to articulate it, but I'm thinking about those multiple choice questions, not multiple choice, it's the questions where you have to provide multiple answers. So maybe, for instance, it might be, what are the 5 true statements? And you're given 10 statements and you need to pick the 5 true ones. Think positively and think negatively. So you might look at one statement and negatively you say to yourself, okay, that one is 100% false. So straight away I can cross that one off, it's not going to be included. Alternatively, you might look at something and say, okay, that one I know is 100% true, so I'm going to make a note and I'm going to make sure I include that in my final answer. So think positively, think negatively. Number 9, be aware of the purpose, audience and form of the passages. This is in terms of conceptual understanding, which you might usually associate with paper 1, the writing paper, but it can be useful for paper 2, reading as well, because sometimes you get those questions like, what is the tone of this piece, or what would an alternative title be? If you can understand the purpose, the audience and the form, the text type of the passage, you'll be in a much better place to answer those kind of questions. And finally, number 10, check your answers. Maybe check each answer after you write the answer. Maybe check each answer at the end of each section. Maybe check your answers at the end of the exam. But if you don't check your answers, you could lose marks. Let's not do that. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope that this is useful for you too. I hope that you do excellent in your exams. I'm sure you will do. If you enjoyed this, if you found it useful, please like, subscribe, tell your friends. But yeah, that's it. Good luck. Take care. Goodbye.